So, you've moved back to Africa, or you're thinking about moving back to Africa. Well, have you considered these things? Watch the video to find out what I'm talking about. Hi again, Caribbeanologists. Welcome to another video. Would you believe that this is actually the second take of this video? And it was a half an hour video that I did prior to this. And it had, the reason why I'm doing this all over again, because this microphone, I like using it because it comes through pretty clear. I don't have an overhead mic. I don't walk with my other mic that I use for my other camera. So I usually like to use this one on the go. But in using it on the other video, I had it hanging down like this, and it was rubbing against my shirt, so it was just making all this distracting noise. So here I go with a second take on this video. Hopefully I can shorten it. Hopefully I remember everything I was trying to say in the last video. But basically the reason why I'm making this video today has two parts to it. But before I can get to any of these parts, let me start off by saying this to just give a little bit of a background or perspective leading up to what I'm going to talk about. As a little boy, I went to visit my mother's country 2 years in a row, 2 summers in a row. This was in 1978 and 1979, or it was 1979 and 1980, one of the two. And in going there to visit her place of birth, which is, I went back to see my grandmother. My oldest brother was still living there at the time, and of course a whole host of family that were living there. I was too small to notice certain things. But even as young as I was, I noticed something interesting, and it seemed as though that the fact that I was born on St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which I've mentioned many times in these videos, back then, the U.S. Virgin Islands was like the place you wanted to be if you were coming from another Caribbean island. If you were not going to the United States, if you were not going to Canada or England, it was like you want to get to the U.S. Virgin Islands. And the reason for that was because the U.S. Virgin Islands, being under the U.S. flag, if you had children there and you happened to be there, they would be born U.S. citizens, which is what I am. I was born a U.S. citizen by virtue of being born in the Virgin Islands. Or you went there to try to work to make the American dollars, because that's the money that we use. We use the American dollar. So going to the U.S. Virgin Islands was considered like a step up in life back in those days. So when you came, when you would go back home to your home island, whether it's Nevis, where my mom is from, or St. Kitts, which is where my father's from, or Antigua, Montserrat, or St. Lucia or Dominica, when you went back, it was almost as though people on those islands looked at you like you were better than them in certain regard. I'm not saying everyone did this, but it was almost like, wow, he came from the Virgin Islands. He came with this and he came with that. And it also did not help. And it still happens to some degree today, because I still saw it, in recent years. When I say recent, I mean within the past 15 years in Jamaica when I used to go there. But you go there, and a lot of people going back home wanted to make a statement or to prove to the people they left behind that by going off to the Virgin Islands, you were actually doing better for yourself. So they probably went home in the latest threads, the latest fashion, got off the plane buying drinks on the house for everybody. So it's like, I have money, look at how I dress, look, I've got the latest fashions on, living in the Virgin Islands has done me well. This is not always the case, mind you, but we know how people can be. It's like, I've got to go back home. I've got to show people and prove to them that by moving to the Virgin Islands, by leaving here and going over to the Virgin Islands, it was a step up in life for me. Okay, that's what used to happen. Now, the interesting thing is, since that time, a lot of those other islands have either gotten to the same level as the U.S. Virgin Islands, or, in my estimation, better. There are people there now, and I guess I need to give a little bit of a background to what I'm talking about. When I was, growing up in the Virgin Islands, as a little boy at the time, we had our television, we had our gas or electric stoves, we had indoor plumbing, we had street lights, and so forth. In Nevis and St. Kitts, where I spent time, well, Nevis where I visited, St. Kitts where I grew up, as a little boy, we didn't have street lights on our road. We didn't have indoor plumbing. We didn't have a television. I mentioned in another video, I used to have to sit down and read in front of a kerosene lamp. We didn't have those type of things. So you can see where going to the U.S. Virgin Islands and having all these creature comforts, it was like a sign of progress. You've arrived. You're up there. Now, a lot of those islands in that time, from since that time to now, again, has either gotten to the level of the U.S. Virgin Islands or surpassed it. I go over there now, there are people living better than me. There are people with big houses, 2 and 3 cars out in their driveway. I'm not saying you didn't have people like that back in those days also, but it was a select few. But now, standard, 2, 3 cars out in the driveway, big house, indoor plumbing, street lights, nice paved roads. So there's really no big difference. So you don't have people coming to the Virgin Islands nowadays on a visit and feeling in awe of anything. Or if you're going to visit, they're looking at you like, oh my goodness, you came from the Virgin Islands. You must have this, you must have that. And even for those people who are thinking this, it's only because a lot of people who are going back to visit give that impression, when in reality, they know that the people living in St. Kitts, in Nevis, and St. Martin are actually doing better than they are in the U.S. Virgin Islands, or even in the United States, or even in England, or even in Canada. So I just want to put that out there because it leads to this. In recent years, and it's been going on for a while, but there's been a culmination, or I should say like an increase in this, where there are a lot of people, a lot of black people in the black diaspora who are moving to Africa. Some people are moving back to Africa because they've come over and didn't like what was going on over here and eventually moved back. You have the other group of people who have family from Africa. Their parents, their grandparents may be from Africa and left and moved to some European country, the United States or Africa or Canada. And now the younger ones, they're like, hey, I'm moving to Africa. I'm moving to where my family came from. Then you have the other group who are just moving. They're looking at it like my ancestry or my ancestors came over here on slave ships hundreds of years ago. I may not know who they are, but I know that they came from Africa, and I'm going to move to Africa because that's where I feel I belong. So there are people leaving Jamaica. There are people leaving the Virgin Islands. There are people leaving different places in the Caribbean, the United States, Canada, Europe, who are moving to Africa to try to make a life for themselves, or it's just where they feel they need to be. They feel that call, they feel that pull, they feel that tug. That's where they feel more comfortable. Many people, I've seen many videos where they've gone to Africa in a visit, fallen in love. You know, it blew their expectations out the door, and they decided, they came back, got their stuff, and they just moved back over to Africa. So I've been seeing so many of those videos. Now, what I have also seen, and I've seen it on my own page, there are still people with this smug attitude that, like, almost sarcastic, like, Africa, who's going over there? And these are black people. Who's going over there? Or I'm sure not a lot of people are going over there, going to pick up on these offers to go over to such and such a place, you know? So there's still this smug attitude like what we had when it came to the Virgin Islands back then, like what I talked about earlier. Like, they look at it like going to Africa is like a step backwards, a step down in life. You're going to Africa. And I think it's still this pervading mindset that Africa is backwards, Africa is full of slums, Africa is full of poverty, all they do is fight, it's full of corruption, all these things are going on. And while these things may be true at certain levels or to certain degrees and so forth, I think a lot of these people who are critical are not paying attention to the progress that Africa has made. Yes, if I had to look back in my mind and thinking of Africa of years ago, when there was still a lot of civil war and unrest and so forth, that was what was going on. It doesn't mean that Africa doesn't have levels of poverty in certain places. It doesn't mean that there are not slums in certain places. And it definitely doesn't mean that there's still not corruption. But Africa is stabilized in a sense where you don't really have the civil wars and the wars going on, where bit by bit, piece by piece, there's progress that is being made. And I think it's a great asset for these people who are moving there, who are bringing their skill set, who are bringing their degrees, their experiences abroad in the diaspora, and they're bringing it over to Africa. I think that this is going to play out for the positive in the future, down the road. It may not seem like much right now, but I think as they go and as they establish themselves, I think it will eventually lead to the prosperity of Africa, and for those who are moving back to places like the Caribbean. But again, you have the naysayers, like, you're going to Africa, you know where you're going, because there's this mentality that the United States, or over on this side of the world, is the land of milk and honey. But a lot of us can tell you that is not the case at all, especially what's going on right now with all the racial tension that's going on right now. Now, yes, there are black people who live in the United States, Canada, and England who have made a name for themselves, who have done very well for themselves, and probably figure, hey, this is my breadbasket right now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not giving this place up. But there are other people who are making money, who are doing well for themselves, who still don't feel satisfied. They still don't feel complete. They still feel out of place living in this country like the United States. I am one of them. So there are people who are making this journey back to Africa. Some people may just want to get away. Maybe things are not working out for them here, and they just want to go to Africa and probably just try their hand there and see how things work out for them. So I am not knocking them. I am not one of the naysayers. I'm like, go for it. Do it. Because I keep thinking to myself, just imagine, okay, I'm in information technology. Just imagine if 100 of me went to the Gambia, or went to Ghana, or went to Nigeria, or went to Kenya, or South Africa. Just imagine 100 of me with experiences. For me, I work for a Fortune 500 company. Just imagine if we took our skill set, our minds, and went over there and decided to invest it in Africa instead of over here, where we're making some white guy rich somewhere. And who's going to go to the Virgin Islands, where I'm from, and hang out on his yacht and then tell me, why did you leave over here? Oh, whatever. Yeah, because you have billions, I don't. But just imagine if we went ahead and we took all of that knowledge, that collective knowledge, experience, and took it to African countries and invested it there. What do you think will happen? What if a group of us who are in the medical field, who are doctors, who went over there and took our skill set, our money, and contributed to the healthcare system over there? Maybe even took our money, maybe even appealed to black celebrities. Hey, like Dikembe Mutombo, for example, who went back to his home country and built a hospital. Just imagine if we did things like this and invested in places like Africa or the Caribbean, where those places would be. But what we generally get, it's we stay over here, we point to all the bad things, we highlight the bad things, or we complain. Places that we come from. Oh, look at what they're doing. Oh, this, that, and whatever the case might be. So we complain. We're staying from a distance. We're not contributing, mind you. We're not trying to make a difference where we come from, but we'll stay here and complain about those places. But just imagine if we stopped the complaining, if we got up. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to tell you when they go back home, because I've heard this before, like for the Virgin Islands. Oh, when I go home and I try to give this idea, they don't want to hear it. The people back home are backwards. They're backward thinking. They're not progressive. They don't want to hear anything I have to say. So I just said, forget it, and I'm just going to keep it over here. But you got to persevere. And the great thing about today's world, it's that you can get things done. Yeah, there are things you may have to rely on the government if you're going to go over there to try to build things. You might have to get permits and, of course, the foot dragging, the red tape, and so forth. But technology helps you to bypass a lot of these things. There's a whole digital world out there, a whole world of technology out there that does not even can just bypass the government altogether, and you can get your things done. That's just the way I see it. That's just the way I feel. And I think we can get things done. But again, I guess it's human nature for us to feel more, to complain. And the United States, or the West, has really sold this idea. The United States, we're the greatest nation on earth. And I always say to myself, when the United States mentions something like that, when people mention that in the United States, the only thing I think of in terms of the greatest thing that the United States is great at, it's blowing up shit. We have a whole arsenal to blow up the world 1,000,000 times over. Our greatness is in our military might. But when you look a little closer, when it comes to the quality of life and the quality of living, yes, it probably is good compared to a whole lot of other places in the world. But even in the industrialized nations, the United States doesn't even rank anywhere close to the top. Education, way down the list. Healthcare, way down the list. Just the quality of life is so difficult here in so many different ways. Many people can tell you all you do in this country is live to survive. The rent and everything, mortgages, depending on where you live, is just like through the roof in the big cities like New York and San Francisco and so forth. Yeah, you might be making the money, but by the time you finish paying for all this expensive stuff, it's a whole other story. But again, they've sold the idea that this is where you need to be. So think about it. You're encouraged to come here, especially if you have a great mind. You're encouraged to come here because they want you to build up their country for their pleasure, for their wealth. And you may get some kickback out of that. And yes, there are people who do very well, black people who do very well. You would probably get something like that. But again, you're here propping up a bunch of billionaires. And I'm just thinking to myself, why not go to a place where people look just like you, where your ancestry comes from? You don't have to, mind you. Obviously, you have a right to choose wherever you want to be. Why not take that back to where you come from and invest that? And those places that you're complaining about, see where they're going to be in 15 years, 10 years, 20 years because of your efforts right now. That's just the way I see it. I know not everyone has the patience. I know everyone wants to make sure that when they touch down, they have all their creature comforts in place. They have to have their AC. They have to make sure the internet is always working. And of course, you want that because that's where some business opportunity is going to be. You just have to have reliable internet. But it's like, oh my goodness, the place is too hot. Oh my goodness, the mosquitoes are biting me. Oh, I can't stay. Oh, the place is too hot. I want to go back to America. I want to go back. I have all these creature comforts that make me feel like whatever. But I just think it comes with a price also. So again, for the folks who have made it back, for the folks who have planned to go back, I certainly encourage you to. I've never been to Africa, but I just think it's a great idea to go back and invest in where you feel your ancestry came from or where you came from. I just think it's just something good to do instead of sitting here and complaining. And here's another big thing that's happening, especially from the Virgin Islands where I'm from, and I've mentioned it in another video. We have an island by the name of St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And we're looking around and finding that a lot of white people are going there. And this is not something for me to go hating on white people, mind you. Okay? This is not what I'm saying. But you go to that island and you look around and there's a lot of white folks living there, doing well for themselves. And they're going there with their riches and their wealth and just living the life over there. And it's like, the local population, the local black population, they're watching themselves just more or less look like they're becoming second-class citizens on their own island. So we who live abroad now, we point, oh, look at what those white people are down there doing. They're this, they're that, they're this. Where are we? I'm in Atlanta. But I'm complaining about back home. Where are you? I'm in Miami, but I'm going to complain about it. All I can do, I'm going to complain. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going back home to try to do anything. I'm just going to sit over here and complain about it. And the next thing you know, what you once had or what was once yours, it's in the hands of other people. And you have just completely lost all control. See how that works? So sitting over here and complaining and fussing about it is not changing anything. Going home, going back, and doing something about it can make a big difference, can make a change. Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated and complex than that. But on the surface, that's just basically how I see it, okay? The second part of what I wanted to talk about is the flip side of this, which is this. And this is speaking to the people who have gone back and to Africa specifically. You've gone back or you plan to go back. And for the people who locally live there who are watching this video right now. I am bringing this forward right now because I am hoping this does not happen. Okay, what happens if the trickling of all these people coming in from the diaspora with their skill set, with their experience, coming over, and all of a sudden they start to make headway, start to make progress. They open up businesses. They get over there, the government favors them because of the skill set that they're bringing. You know what? I like you because you're coming with 20 years of experience in information technology. I'm going to hire you because you're coming with 15 years of consulting. I'm going to hire you for this law firm or whatever because you're bringing all this experience with you. What if this start happening and the diaspora population who are there start to rise in society? Next thing you know, they're in government. Next thing you know, they may become the presidents of these countries or people in position and power. I wonder, how would the local population, the people who've always been there, feel about this, where the government is favoring those people over us? I am just hoping we do not get to this. And for that reason, this is why I would like the people of the diaspora who go there and start making a name for themselves be cognizant of this. And cognizant in the sense that, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to, if I get a successful business going, I'm going to hire local people. I'm going to make sure the people who are here, I'm going to also help them to improve their lot in life. If I'm an IT person, I'm going to teach them. I'm going to open places to teach them, educate them, to bring them up to that level that they can also be competing for these jobs and these opportunities, or to go off and start their own businesses. I don't want it to be a situation where the folks from the diaspora go over, they hire other people from the diaspora, or that's all they're interested in, and they hang out more with their kind, so to speak, and the local population who's there just have to look on and just like say, wait a minute, why do we feel like we're being left out? Why do we feel like we're being overlooked? I don't want that to be the case at all. So we need to be aware of this because it can happen. It can happen. Liberia is one example. For those of you who don't know, and I'm going to try to dig back into my history, and hopefully I'm saying this correctly or I'm explaining this correctly. But just remember, the country that we know as Liberia today always had people living there. But what happened was the United States, when there were freed Africans, I'm not even going to say the word slaves, I hate using that word, but when they were freed Africans, what they did was they figured they didn't want to have these freed Africans walking around in the United States, because they figured that, hey, you know, they may rise to a certain level or maybe come back for revenge. So let's deport them. Let's get them. Yeah, of course, they did it in a different way to make it seem like they were being nice. Hey, look, you can give you some land over in the African continent. You can go over there and we will resettle you. The United States resettled all these people and brought them over to what we know as Liberia today. Eventually, those people that came in, and even people from the Caribbean islands, like Barbados specifically, they came over and they began to become the cream of the crop of the country that became known as Liberia. So the local population looking on and realizing, wait a minute, these people, they're doing well. And we, the local population here, we're like on the bottom rung. Something is wrong with this picture. And I'm not saying this was entirely the reason for the Liberian Civil War, but it played some role in it as far as I remember. Similar situation that happened out in Rwanda. The Tutsis were seen as invaders. Now, this goes back, of course, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, where the Tutsis, if I'm not mistaken, migrated from other parts of Africa, I think further north, down into what we know as Rwanda today. The Hutus, on the other hand, saw themselves as the original peoples of that area. But when the colonial powers came in and took over that area, they favored the Tutsis over the Hutus. The Tutsis were given higher positions. The same thing also happened in Liberia, actually. You know, they were given certain positions of power in the colonial sphere that was going on at the time. And they were the ones who were favored. Of course, then that caused tension between the Hutus, who didn't see themselves getting the same benefits as the Tutsis. And eventually it led to that genocide. I don't want to ever see that happen in Africa again. Now, it's not something that's going to happen today. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. But again, what happens when these people of the diaspora, 3 generations in, 4 generations in, and they have taken their skill set that they have today, springboards their posterity into prosperity? and the local population still finds themselves dragging along or straggling along, I am almost positive it is going to cause a certain level of tension. Right now, there are people from the diaspora going to the Gambia, going to Ghana, going to Nigeria, and from what I'm understanding, they feel welcome. There are people telling them welcome back home, and they feel comfortable for right now. But down the road, we've got to look down the road that we don't fall into that same trap where one group start to see themselves as being alienated while the other group rises to the top. We've got to be aware of that and to watch out for something like that. So I'm putting it out there for you guys to discuss. I personally believe this is an interesting topic. Okay, it's me, so I'm being biased, and it's me just talking in front of a camera. But I'm hoping that those of you who are watching this video right now find it interesting enough. And you can come down in the comment section. So those of you who are thinking about moving to Africa, those of you who are already there, those of you who are moving to the Caribbean, or those of you who are already there, I would love this to be a topic of discussion. So come down into the comment section, comment, tell me what you think about this. You can go ahead and dislike, you can go ahead and disagree with me, you can go ahead and agree with me if you want to, but I would love if you come in and let's have a discussion about this. People like Wode from Africa, someone who I follow, people like the people who run the YouTube channel Bla xit, that's BLA space XIT. I'm giving you guys a prop, okay, Bla xit. They are big on come back home, come back home, come back home. And I love their work. And their job is to more or less tell you the positive things about Africa, which there are a lot of positive things about Africa that is just being overlooked or not brought to light. They do all of this stuff. I'm looking beyond when we finally do move back, when all these people get back over there, head over to Africa. I'm looking beyond that to make sure that when everything settles down and everything starts to settle in, that we land on our feet and we do it right, that there's not tension between the diaspora and the local people who live there. Okay? So please, let me know what you think. I want to hear from you. All right, so this video, I'm probably ending it 2 minutes shorter than the other one that I did. Hopefully the audio quality is much better. It's not all this that you were hearing against my shirt in the other one, which of course I'm not going to upload. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Again, I have big things for this channel coming forward. COVID-19 just has it held down. So forgive me if you just have to sit down here and just listen to me talk without all the graphics and everything that will go into video productions that you would see on YouTube right now. So like, dislike if you want to, but what I would like you to really do is the comment section. I respond to people. I'm not one of those people who are like, I'm a YouTuber and you put things on there and I don't even pay attention to, unless you're talking some kind of nonsense, because I do have some videos like that where people are coming in spamming and talking nonsense. But if you come in with some quality comment, whether you agree with me or not, I am going to respond to you. So please, please, please head down into the comment section. Tell me what you think about these topics that I've brought up. Make sure that you share it so that other people can come in, watch the video, and have comments. And most importantly, subscribe, okay? I think it's going to get really interesting in here for Caribbeanology. So thank you so much for your support. You guys take care. Until the next video.